How do you do? Oh, allow me to introduce myself.
I am the last sane sports fan.
I am a genius by trade.
And welcome to The View from the Midwest.
I just knew too much. Does that make me crazy? Does that make me crazy? Does that make me crazy? Possibly.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another edition of The View from the Midwest. Let's get right back into it right now. One of the topics I want to talk about today is something that came up due to the fact that it is that time of year. It's March Madness, and it seems like any time college sports come in to the forefront of our consciousness, these kind of topics come up. And the topic that I want to discuss today is something that Keith Olbermann brought up. And if you wonder why I'm talking about that, well, we'll just leave the superlatives to your imagination. Basically, I watch a show called ESPN FC, which is a soccer show, which has nothing to do with this topic. But I usually watch it on DVR, either the next day or the next morning or that night. So what happens is I usually end up watching Keith Olbermann's intro right after the ESPN FC show, just because sometimes I find what he has to say a little bit interesting. Other times I find him extremely difficult to bear. And we'll leave the politics out of it and all that kind of stuff, because most people who follow him know what kind of the side of the spectrum he tends to land on. Basically, what he irritated me about was there was this topic, and it was a good piece written on ESPN.com if you want to go check it out. Basically, it included the two ideas from Tom Izzo and Rick Pitino about the future outcomes of potential one-and-dones or people who go directly to the NBA when that was available from high school. And it was a really well done piece because I thought it presented both ideas very politely, very astutely. And I agree with both coaches. Now, I'm going to touch on those real briefly because the article does a much better job. Basically, Coach Tom Izzo of Michigan State says that he believes that 10, 15, 20 years down the road that we're going to have enough people available to do studies to where he believes that they're doing a disservice allowing these kids to go immediately to the NBA or only go to college for 1 year and then to the NBA, because he's going to say, his point was, down the road we're going to find out that a lot of these guys are living on the streets. I don't go that far. I don't think that these people are homeless. I don't think that they're wearing rags and all this kind of stuff. I think they've made something else of their lives, but they didn't do what they set out to do, which was make it in the NBA, because they didn't get the proper information. On the flip side, Coach Pitino thinks that it is useless to have players go to school for 1 year, because the point he made, and I agree with him a little bit, was it's kind of pointless to go to school, because even he said, he's like, oh, well, they take like 3, 4, 5 months of classes, then they take a few online courses in the second semester to remain legal in terms of the college eligibility, and then they leave. And how is that good for anybody? They're not really soaking in the education. They're taking up a spot in the school that could be used by somebody else. They're taking away scholarship money, all that kind of deal. So why not just let them go? If they can apply their trade in the NBA D-League, or if they can go over to Europe, make a little money that way, then that's their opinion. What irritated me about Keith Olbermann is he jumped on this bandwagon, which has the most ridiculous point that I've ever heard made, and lots of people seem to want to make it. Sports, apparently, according to this faction, is the only profession in America, to where you have to go to school. You're forced to go to school before you can go professional. Now let that soak in, because maybe some of you know professions that are not like that. that you can go to high school, get your degree, and then all of a sudden make your living for the rest of your life. I'm not saying there aren't a few jobs out there like that, but most jobs that you're going to start in right after high school are going to be minimum wage, 9 to 5 if you're lucky, because we live in such a 24/7 society now. And maybe you can build your way up and then get to the top of the ladder that way. But that's not what professional athletes do. They go from 0 to 100. Even if you're making league minimum, you're still making more than your average person does in a year. And they only have to work 6, 7 months out of the year, maybe 8, 9 in some of the longer league sports. Now they're putting a physical toll on their bodies. I'm not going to sit here and argue what they should get paid. But I'm sick of this idea that they are the only ones being forced to go to school, because there are plenty of other jobs out there to where people have to go get extra training. The example that Mr. Oberman used was, if you're good at working on cars, you can just become a mechanic. That is laughable. I mean, really? I'd like to see the person who is 18 years old and just starts working on cars for a reputable company. Now, that's not to say that they couldn't just do it by themselves and make a little extra money just out of people's pockets. But you have to be a mechanic anymore. You have to be a computer wizard as well if you're going to work on today's cars. You can't just say, oh, well, I know how to tinker a little bit on the engine. I know how to change the oil. I know how to change tires, and that's all good enough. That isn't good enough anymore. You have to know about computers. You have to know about just about anything to do with cars. And there's so much that you have to learn that you need extra training. Maybe you're not going to a 4-year university, but you're still going to some sort of extra schooling to allow that to happen, to allow that to be your profession. And this ridiculous notion that professional sports are the only ones that require you to do something before you're allowed into their little union is ridiculous. Everybody and their brother has to go to some sort of extra schooling to get to where they want to be. Even in the business world, even if you did work your way up, you start in the mailroom, there's no way you're going to be the corporate CEO unless sometime you took night classes, you did something to improve yourself, because those days are long gone. And maybe Mr. Oberman is still living in those days, because he even made the case that you could be a reporter without going to college. And those days are completely gone, because there are plenty of us right here that have gone to college and are still looking to bust into that profession, and there's no way that anybody who doesn't have a degree is getting to work. So I think they need to check themselves at the door, find out that professional athletes are not the only ones that need to go to school before they can go pro, and find themselves a different side of that opinion. That's the view from the Midwest. I'll see you next time.
I remember when I lost my mind. There was something so pleasant about that place. Even your emotions have an echo in so much space.